Here's another comments, questions, and tips episode. I got 11 items here from the DCC video, from another comments and questions video, easy setup of the Zephyr, and much, much more. So let's take a look at what we have here today. I'm Tom Kvichak, and this is Tom's Trains and Things. This channel was created to help other modelers who are in need of guidance in pursuing their dream of building a model railroad. Now, I have a bunch of questions, comments, and tips here from the past couple of videos that I did, basically before DCC, and comments and questions, easy setup of Zephyr, LocoNet cables, NMRA, PM42, turnouts and switches, and which switch. So let's get started with that in a couple of seconds. But before we do that, go ahead and check out my Patreon page. I would like to welcome my new patrons, Chris O'Connell and Duncan Alsop. I thank you very much for contributing to my Patreon page, my Patreon efforts. So thank you very much. Now, let's get going with this. My first 4 questions come from the before DCC wiring video that I just put out last week. And the first comment comes from Randy. Randy's Rock and Roll Railroad McCarter. Thanks for sharing, Tom. I have a question. My railroad is DC with blocks about 16. And I'm assuming he's saying 16 foot. And when I switch to DCC, will I need to run a bus wire, or will my block wiring work as the bus wire? Now, what I responded to him, I said, yes, you should be good with your existing wiring as long as it's heavy enough. I have a chart in the video with the recommended wire sizes for each scale. You may have to add feeder wires closer than 16 foot apart, since the demand for DCC signal is higher than that of DC. The best way to judge that is, once you have everything connected up, put a quarter on your track at the farthest point away to see if your command station will still short out. If it shorts out, you're good to go. If it doesn't short out, then you need to put either heavier feeder wires on or put them closer together. So that's the first question there from Randy. The next one comes from Hillbilly Railroad Scott. Now, Scott wrote in, nice job, brother. Can you use a Zephyr Extra as a booster and use a handheld to run the layout? Thank you again. Now, the Zephyr is a throttle, command station, and booster all built into one. You could use 2 Zephyrs, and you could add throttles to your Zephyr. Now, if you're using a UP5, you could add as many throttles, up to 10, as you can on a LocoNet network. Now, you could use a Zephyr with a Zephyr as a booster. That will increase the amperage of your system, but it will not increase the amount of throttles that you'll be able to use with it. Zephyr is limited to 10 on the ones that I know about, and if you hook 2 Zephyrs up together, one's going to be a command station, one's going to be a booster, so you're still only going to be able to use 10 throttles maximum on there. So I hope that answers your question there. The next one comes from Terry. Terry Lefevre wrote in, I have a Digitrax 210 command station, and that's one of the new ones, the Evo command stations. I also have a Digitrax 150 command booster station. My question is, can I use the 150 as a booster for the 210? Yes, you can use the booster. All you have to do is on the DB150, hook up your configure A to the ground, and it will become a booster. Our next question comes from Vinny, BNSF6951. Great overview on DCC systems. I was wondering if you can do a vid on how to use the programming terminals on my DCS100 command station. I can't find my owner's manual, and help would be appreciated. I said, thanks, Vinny. This Saturday, I'll have a video out covering comments and questions for the past week. I'll put the programming of the DCS100 in there. Now, Vinny, on your DSC-100, all you have to do is hook the wires up to your program A and program B terminals, run it to your program track, and you're good to go to program. That's all you have to do on it. I did a shout out for Digitrax Dad. He demonstrates how to use the DCS-100 in one of his videos. It's how to do something else on it, but he uses the program tracks on it, and I'll put a link to it down here so you could watch that. Got a lot of good information on there, and I suggest you watch that video right there. So I hope that helps you out, and watch Digitrax Dad's video, and you might be able to get a little bit more information on that. Now let's go on to the next one. This is about another comments and questions video that I did, where somebody asked me something from one of my other ones. I answered it on the comments and question. Now this viewer, ELSDP-45, and I don't know your name. I asked you what your name was, but you never answered me back. But anyway, you asked a question on there. I have several engines with sound. When I turn the sound off and later go back and turn the sound on, I don't get the initial startup of the engine. It's just the sound of the engine idling, running. I would like to get the startup every time I select an engine. All my decoders have the startup function. I appreciate any help. And what I did was I referred him back to a comments and questions video. And let me bring this thing up here. And basically it was to adjust CV116 and change it to 7. And that will turn off your sound whenever you're not using your locomotive. And when you first use your locomotive, when you put power on the tracks, you have no sound on it until you put your throttle to step 1. And then your sound decoder will kick in and start the process of the startup of the engine. So, and he wrote back and he said that did the trick. Now here's a comment, and I'd say this would be a tip for the Super Empire builder. Dominic Rocca, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, commented about his DB150 that he was unable to program with it, so he ended up getting instead of the Super Empire builder, he got the Super Chief, so he could read back his CVs, through his throttle. Well, come to find out that he purchased his back in 2003 and never did the update on it. Now there was like a flash update that was available, but he never did that, and we're just assuming that since he had an earlier version of the DB150, he was not able to read it back in JMRI. That was his question. The DB150, okay, even with a JMRI, you cannot read back CVs with the Super Empire builder. The DB150 is not able to. I used to have this, and even with a Loco buffer, I still couldn't read back. It will allow JMRI programming. I ended up getting myself a Super Chief, a DCS-100 command station. And what I told him, I use my DB150 all the time in conjunction with JMRI to read back the CVs. Through comments going back and forth, we determined that he had a very old one that he purchased in 2003, and he never did the flash update on it. Now, Digitrax had a flash update available for the DB150, so it would be able to be used with JMRI to read back. But he never did that, so that's what we found out on there. So if you have an older DB150 and you never did the flash and you cannot read back from JMRI, I suggest you go on Digitrax website. I'll put a link to it in the bottom, and do the flash update on it, and hopefully with that you'll be able to read back your CVs with JMRI and a PR3. So I hope that helps you out right there. The next one is from our friend Digitrax Dad. I just did a shout out for him, and this is the reason I did a shout out for him, because he responded to how to make LocoNet cables. Now, he responded to me saying that there is another tester that is better than the LT1 where you could determine which end of the connector is bad if you have a bad connector on either one of them. And I thanked him. I watched the videos. I watched a lot of other of his videos, and I did a shout out on him, Digitrax Dad. If you haven't taken a look at his channel already, I'll put a link to it down here. Also put a link to the video about the LocoNet cables and a link to the tester that he uses. And I'll put a little screenshot of it right here. So go check him out, Digitrax Dad, and thank you for that information on there. Thank you very much. The next one is a tip from the NMRA gauge video that I did, and it's from Robert Dye. I also use the gauge thickness for gapping track sections that need to be isolated from each other. And that is a good tip. Thank you very much, Robert Dye. I really appreciate having that tip on here. The next one is about the PM42 video that I did, and it is from our friend, the Lofty N-Scaler, Curtis, that I did a shout out on him last month. Now, he's asking, what does the LocoNet connection on the PM42 terminals transmit back to the command station? You know, I told him I'd have to check it out and, you know, test it out, but I went and looked in the manual and I found the answer right there. If connected to LocoNet, the PM42 sends information to the system as faults are detected, cleared, and when auto-reversing occurs. So it does transmit information back to the command station through the LocoNet, but also you can remove the LocoNet connectors from the PM42 and it will still operate. Thank you for that question. I learned something from that by researching it, so thank you very much, Curtis. My next comment comes from Alvaro Acosto. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Do you have any videos for a DIY turnout motor? I heard that they can be built from servos. And I said, well, I have a modeler friend that's going to be sending me a Tam Valley controller and a servo. Our friend, the Lofty N-Scaler, said he would send me some so I could play around with it. Also wanted to know if I had a video on doing a trestle, and although I've done many trestles on here, and I don't know if you could see them down here. Oops, let me move that out of the way. But I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them right there that I did. They all are scratch built, but I'm going to be doing another one over on the end of my layout, and when I do, I'll be doing a video on that, and I'll be doing a video coming up shortly on the Tam Valley and the servo motors on there. And some time ago, a couple of years ago, I've been playing around with Arduino, and I was doing experimenting with the servo motors. I'll have to get the sketch out that I had for those servo motors and play around with it and do a video on that also. That concludes this portion of the comments, questions, and tips. If you have any more comments, questions, tips, or anything that you would like to say on any of my videos, just leave a comment down below so we can go over it so other model railroaders can learn from these questions, from these tips, from these comments. That's why I do these videos, so you can learn from what other modelers are doing and what they are saying about the subjects that I cover here on my channel. So next week we got some more videos coming out. I got shout out Monday evening, Wednesday got another one, and Saturday got another one. Check out tomstrainsandthings.com. I got some new stuff on there. Thank you to my 2 new patrons, Chris O'Connell and Duncan Alsop. I really appreciate it. $5 from Chris O'Connell and $25 from Duncan Alsop. So thank you very much, and we'll see you.